So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics, and there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating, there's no harassing, there's no bullying, there's no misinformation, there's no propaganda or misinformation. We are just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. So if there's anything you've always wanted to know, go ahead and throw it in the chats. It can be something simple, something complicated, something that's about something that happened this week, something that's a little more historically based. If I can't answer your question, I promise I won't make things up. What's up, Brian Barbita? Great to see you again. So yeah, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. I know that politics is particularly weird these days with all of the misinformation and propaganda that is running around rampant out there. And so this is where you can ask all your questions and we can try to have a shared version of reality once again in this country. So just throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. This is not a show for fighting or debating or harassing or bullying or roasting. I'm not trying to, what do you call it? I'm not trying to prove how much smarter I am than everybody else, or, that certain voters are dumb and other voters are smart. This is not what this show is. This show is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. I hope everybody's having a good Martin Luther King Day, and I think that it is interesting, which political party seems to really reflect the values of Martin Luther King, and yet they all kind of do lip service to him. Interesting, I think. Anyways, let's get to these questions, everybody. No such thing as a dumb question. Everybody is welcome, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I don't believe in debates. I don't think that they're productive. So we're not doing that here. It's just going to be good faith discussions about what is happening in politics. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. Shork says, is this camera new? No, I'm on the road. And so I do not have my regular setup. But excellent first question to the day, Shork. Thank you so much for being here. Good to see all you regulars popping up in the feed here as you are joining. So yeah, any questions about politics, just go ahead and throw it in the chat. We'll get to answering it. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can feel like trying to learn a new language. It's also really difficult to pay attention and figure out what's going on in politics these days because of all of the misinformation and propaganda that is running around rampant out there. So this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics and no one's going to make fun of you for being too far to the left or too far to the right, or too knowledgeable or not knowledgeable enough. Brian says, you see Kamala Harris visiting the MLK Memorial? No, I did not see that. Lauji says, would you support a war if it means GTA 6 comes out a bit sooner? No, I would not. Mia's Levy Adventure says, is there any way that he can really take Greenland away from Denmark? He can if the Republican Congress does not stop him, and if the Supreme Court does not stop him, and if the European military does not stop him, and if the military goes along with it. But those are a lot of ifs, and where a lot of times Trump gets away with shit that we think, I can't believe this fucking happened. It does seem like there is a significant amount of pushback in Congress and in the military, in addition to Europe and the markets. Joe M says, what do you think about the leftists harassing Christians in a place of worship? I think that if you are associated with ICE and you continue to associate with ICE, even as you are watching the atrocities that they are doing, I think that that is a completely fine way to protest. I do not think that just because you are in a house of worship means that all of a sudden, your associations are suddenly fine. Okay, Thomas Grant says, I'm trying to take Greenland. Remind me of a German move. I'm not Melanie says, Rack men love weak leaders. I don't know what that means. Laoji says, how would you feel about Canada if they helped Europe defend Greenland? I think they should, 100%. All right, excellent start to the questions, everybody. Joshua says, voting for Republicans, not even looking for the name, just party. Is that what you're saying that you're doing? Because I don't think you should. Behi5 says, Trump will take Greenland as he deserves it and will win 2028. Okay, so that's an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Baldwig says, opinion on Israel existing. I think that there are people living there right now who are perfectly nice people who just want to live their lives, and I think they should be allowed to stay. I do not think that it is correct. I don't think it is moral or correct or legal the way that the Netanyahu government is treating the people of Palestine. So I believe that the people of Palestine should be able to stay where they are, and I believe the people of Israel should be able to stay where they are. Brett says, thoughts on Houston autistic teen held in ICE custody for 50 days. You know, Brett, it is one of many atrocities that ICE is perpetuating on the American people. I hadn't heard about that one specifically, but yeah, it all fucking tracks, unfortunately, because these guys are fucking monsters. They're behaving as though they have zero oversight, as though they do not need to obey laws. Yeah, it's fucking disgusting, you know? And I think that the fact that they are being emboldened by the Trump administration, the fact that they are being enabled by a Republican Congress, the fact that they are not being trained long enough, the fact that they got guys like Enrico Torrio, who's the leader of the Proud Boys, you know, supposedly is in ICE right now. Like yeah, you know, there's nothing good going on there. They're hiding their faces. They know what they're doing is unpopular and people hate them. Yeah, it's fucking disgusting. Triska says, is Trump's plan for a board of peace legitimate? No, nothing he does is. It's all corruption and bullshit. Dylan says, hi, are you in the US or the UK? I am in the US. Okay. I'm not Melanie says, he is soft, weak, threatened by competent men. Are you talking about me or are you talking about Donald Trump? Claudia says, are you able to see my questions? You know, questions sometimes come really fast, and so it's difficult for me to see them all. Cool Hand Luke says, was it wrong how open Biden let the borders be so loose? So I do not believe that. Let's be clear about something. The border was never open during the Biden administration. They had different standards for immigration during the Biden administration, and I do not think that that's a problem at all. You know, like they were trying to allow people to come in the right way, and I think that that is fine because immigration is a net positive. There was also a an influx of people sneaking into the country illegally, and that is obviously a concern if you are, for example, living close to the border and you've got just like hordes of people tramping through your backyard in the middle of the night. I'm sure that's really scary, and I'm sure that that just, you know, it feels very violating probably. And so there are things that we, you know, that Biden probably should have done to try to address that situation. But I also think it's really important that we recognize how the Republican Party has kind of gaslit people to believe that immigration is responsible for problems that the billionaire class has started. And because the Republican Party and right-wing media is constantly lying about immigration, it is sometimes difficult for the left to figure out what's real and what's not real. And so, you know, if I hear that there's an immigration crisis during the Biden administration, my gut instinct is going to be, oh, well, you will say that no matter what, because you love using immigration as a political football to try to advance your fascist agenda, you know? And then, you know, we got more data, and it turns out that there were a record number of crossings, illegal crossings during the Biden administration. But, you know, at that point, all of the propaganda had worked, you know? So it's all bullshit. Scrolling down to the bottom of the comments, Melanie says, I'm weak. I just want to whine and complain. Yeah, Melanie, I don't think that you're here in good faith, so I'm going to go ahead and block you. So see you later, Melanie. That's what you get for spamming the comments. Ozman says, opinion on Palestine. What Israel is doing to them is disgusting. So we should not be sending them any more money and weapons. Alrighty. Scrolling down to the bottom. Real Bendis says, can you understand how Holocaust survivors are offended by the comparisons of ICE to the Gestapo? You know, I can, Real Benda, but I do think that there's this weird, I don't know, like as a Jewish person, I feel qualified to talk about how terrible the Holocaust was, And I also think that I feel that other things can be that bad or worse. There is something that I sometimes see in the, Israeli community very specifically, where nothing is as bad as the Holocaust. Nothing could ever be as bad as the Holocaust. Nothing is the same as the Holocaust. And I find that to be a little intellectually dishonest and a little, I don't know, purposefully putting on blinders so that you can get away with annexing the West Bank and shit like that. But I get it, if there are other ways that those people want us to describe things that are very, 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 very similar to the Holocaust, but not exactly, then I'm open to that. But I don't know. I feel like there is such a substantive case to be made for why what is currently going on in America resembles, Germany in the 1940s. It seems intellectually dishonest to say that that is not the case. And the fact that our political culture has made it so that calling somebody a Hitler, calling somebody a Nazi, just seems like rote, just seems like, this is what the parties do, ignores the fact that there are very real comparisons, very dangerous and worrying comparisons that can be made. Okay, Burden says, anyone else lagging super bad? Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not in my usual setup, so it is potential that we are not getting the quality of a stream as we usually do. It's the Rocketeer over on Twitch. Great to see you. Says, what if he's been talking about Iceland the entire time? He just got them swapped in his potato brain. It's very possible it's the Rocketeer. Flavius Belarusius says, oh no, I missed that one. What do you think Congress will look like in 30 years? Oh, I've got no idea. Average Joe says the Gestapo didn't start gassing Jews right away, did they? I'm not I'm not really a history person, but that sounds about right to me. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom. Period says liberals stop putting on this false moral act. You stand by imperialism and fascism too. Period and black profile picture. I don't think that that's a productive comment. Like you're assuming a lot about what I believe. You're assuming a lot about what other people on the left believe. So none of us are allowed to be morally superior to anyone else. There, but for the grace of God go I. Do unto others that they would have do unto you. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So maybe we can take things down a peg. Maybe we can take the rhetoric down a little bit. I was just getting called a fascist over on Threads because I was telling people that we need to, form coalitions in order to defeat fascism. Like that's the only way that you defeat fascism is by forming coalitions with people that disagree with you. And so I was like, I believe in abolish ICE, but if you believe in reform ICE, I am willing to form a coalition with you to try to get rid of the I Love ICE party. And then because I was saying that I am fine working with people who don't believe in abolishing ICE, but just reforming ICE, I was being called a fascist up and down. So, I don't think that's productive. All that did was make me mad at all those people who may or may not be real. All right. Period says liberalism stand by imperialism, colonialism, capitalism. Liberalism is not the left. Okay. Well, I'm sure some people would disagree with the way that you're defining all of those terms. Period. Maybe you could have a little humility and recognize that there are other people besides you who maybe have different opinions about things. Burdan says Trump's not a fascist. I think people are really overreacting. There have been far worse presidents. Completely disagree with that, Burdan. Would you acknowledge that there's never been a president who is as corrupt as Donald Trump? And then maybe we can get to the is he or is he not a fascist part of things. Daniel D says, why is Trump pardoning indicted criminals? Because he wants to communicate to people. First of all, he's selling them. So people will give him money and then he will pardon whoever they want. They want to have pardoned by him. But also it's communicating to people like, you can go out there and you can do crimes so long as you're on my team. I will protect you. And if you're not on my team, then I'll throw you in jail for crimes that I make up. Cruel World says being called a racist fascist isn't productive, but it's true. Yeah, I guess it depends on who you're talking about, but I think that there are racists and there are fascists, and so I think that depending on who you're talking about, that can be either accurate or not. Azia says liberal conservative Republicans are all war criminals. I disagree with that. Mu Anan says historians are saying Trump's in a different class on the tyrant realm. I generally agree with that opinion. Scott Clower, great to see you again. Birdan says Nixon. I don't know what that means. John Bradley says, what has been your favorite satirical Trump awards? Oh, I don't know. Birdan says Nixon was more corrupt. So Birdan, I think that is wildly inaccurate. Like, think about the fact that Trump has a crypto coin. Think about the fact that Trump accepted a $400 billion jet from the Qataris. Like, Nixon didn't even get close to that level of corruption. Can you agree with me on that? Okay, Ecuadorian Equido says, how are we doing? Your TikTok froze for a bit. Yeah, I'm on the road, so it's not as clean of a setup as I usually have. Sean Brown says, ask me anything about politics from a Democrat perspective. I mean, I am a Democrat, so, I don't really think that's disqualifying, but, if you do, I don't know if there's anything I can really do about it. Ian Niles says, corruption is corruption. It's all the same. Completely disagree. Ian Niles, there's big corruption and there's little corruption. And, what do you call it? Trump is a level of corruption that we have never seen in this country before. All right, Birdan says, I'm not even saying I like Trump that much, just annoying when people call it a dictatorship. Can you acknowledge that he's trying to do dictatorship, Birdan? And what did you say? Did you respond to my Nixon is not even close to being as corrupt as Donald Trump is? You did not respond to that. And, lots of people are complaining in the TikTok that my stream is lagging. So I'll tell you guys what I'm going to do. I'm going to pop off and then pop back on and try to get on the Wi-Fi here and see if that helps. All right, guys, I will be right back. Let's see here. Can I pause the live stream? Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. Average Joe says he's currently sending the Venezuelan oil sales to Qatari banks. Yeah, Average Joe, 100%. That is, corruption unlike anything we have seen in America before. I'm not a history major, but I am pretty confident of that. All right, somebody I can't read your characters that are your, what do you call it? That is your background. Did the Minnesota National Guard declare war? No, I do not believe that the Minnesota National Guard declared war. And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics, everybody. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated they might be. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, so this is the place where you can ask all your questions about politics, and no one's going to roast you or judge you or try to get into a fight with you. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. And if you are watching on TikTok, let me know if my stream is better now that I'm on my hotel's Wi-Fi. So yeah, throw your questions in the chat. Let me know what you want to know, what you want to talk about regards to politics. I'm feeling a little spicy because I was just being called a fascist over on Threads. So let's get into it over here on TikTok. What's up, Lauren? Great to see you again. All right. Thank you so much for confirmation, everybody. So yeah, any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I am here to answer. I'm not here to fight or harass or debate or bully anybody. If you have different political opinions than me, I do not care. I am here to answer your questions in good faith regardless. Shell Bell says, clearly they don't know the definition of fascism. I mean, it might not even be about not knowing the definition of fascism. It might be, I don't care what the definition of fascism is, that anybody who disagrees with me is a fascist. And, it's a little rich considering that there are people on the right who are acting very, very fascistic who make that exact same argument. But, sometimes different things are different. And so, yeah. Krabby says, who do you think the candidates will be in 2028? I do not feel like anybody is qualified to make that prediction. Laura, great to see you again, says, it's your birthday today. Happy birthday, Laura. Okay. SLT says, how do you feel about Don Lemon and the whole storming the church thing this weekend? I don't know too much about Don Lemon. When he got fired, I started hearing that there were horror stories that he was like a bad guy. And so I don't know, but I always thought that he was a fine reporter, but if he was a toxic human being, then yeah, I suppose, like let's not listen to what Don Lemon says. Now, as far as the storming of the church goes, I think that it is a perfectly valid form of protest. I do not believe that you get to skirt the consequences of your associations with ICE just because you are in a house of worship. Okay, Adrian says thoughts on 1,500 paratroopers ready to deploy to Minnesota. I mean, it's weird. It's a weird and dangerous and irresponsible time that we are living in, where Tim Walz is thinking about the National Guard. Trump is thinking about sending in paratroopers to fight who, what? I don't understand. Yeah, it's just we need to be looking at everything that Trump does is potentially trying to escalate conflicts so that he can declare martial law, so that he can cancel elections. And that's like a really, really big deal. And we should all be really upset about that. Okay. Laura says, I call reps attend protests, but I hear boycotting companies is more effective. Thoughts and advice. So it's difficult to have as effective of a boycott these days because of all the monopolization that's happening in the market. Yes, boycotting is effective, but it's harder to make a dent because any company that you boycott has 1,000 other, like conglomerates and, parent companies and shit like that are making up that revenue. So yeah, it's all part of the work. So, call your reps, attend protests, and, if you want to have that kind of impact, go for it as well. Join groups that are already doing stuff like that. Striking. I think striking is probably going to be more effective than boycotting, just because, without the workers, they can't make their profit. And so I think more effective than not buying their goods is probably not allowing them to even make their goods. Okay. Birdan says, I disagree with Trump being a fascist just as much as I disagree with Kamala being a communist. Okay, Birdan, but if you look at the people that study fascism, they will tell you that Trump is doing very fascist things. Like he's doing a lot of things that Hitler did during the 1930s and 40s. So why do you think that what Trump is doing is not fascist if what Hitler did is fascist and Trump and Hitler are doing a lot of the same things, Birdan? Let me know what you think about that. And if there's anybody in here who is a mod, you can feel free to pin Birdan's comments so that we can continue our back and forth. SLT Violated says, do you seriously think Trump will stop the midterm elections? Super scary prospects. I don't know if he'll be successful, but he's going to try. The Republican Party and Donald Trump, they do voter suppression. They do lying and cheating and stealing in order to win elections. And so we have to be prepared. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of leeway for doing shenanigans and bullshit to try to either depress turnout or intimidate people away from the polls or potentially steal ballots and vote tabulation machines and shit like that. So we just have to be, we have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? We have to be vigilant, and we have to be on the phone with our representatives and our secretaries of state and being like, what are you doing to protect our elections? What are you doing to make sure that our elections are free and fair and that our votes are being counted accurately? But yeah, they're going to try. Whether or not they are successful is up to us. Okay, let's see here. Did Birdan respond? Did Birdan respond? Did Birdan respond? Birdan respond? I do not see if he did. All right. Yeah, it doesn't seem like Birdan's responded yet. Birdan says fascist regimes usually try to control the media. They are. Birdan, did you not hear about what happened at CBS? Did you not hear about what happens, at the various, reporter pools at the White House and at the Pentagon? Is this new information for you, Birdan? Let me know. All right. I and lips emoji says Greenland is vital to the security of America. No, it's not. Ivan Cisco says also it looks like they are not releasing all of the e-files. Yeah, I mean that's illegal. What they're doing is illegal. There you go. Taxes. I thought election denial was a dangerous conspiracy that undermines the democratic process. Yeah, and if I ever do that, then you can rake me over the coals for it. But I have never done it so far. So there you go. Avery says, thoughts on fascism? I'm against it. Burdan says, wouldn't I not be hearing anti-Trump things online? So there are levels to this, Burdan, and there's intimidating colleges to elevate conservative voices. There is replacing the head of various news agencies. It's subtle sometimes, but sometimes it's blatant, and it's not all encompassing. Like, if there was one pirate radio station that was still able to operate underground and was still able to put out anti-Trump messages, would you believe that Trump was not a fascist because there was one pirate radio channel that was able to continue broadcasting? I think you need to look at this not as, is it 100% totalitarian or not 100% totalitarian, but what is the world that Trump is trying to make happen? And the world that he's trying to make happen is that there is no independent media, and it's fake news if he says it's fake news, and it's not, and it's real news if he says it's real news. Additionally, you should look at the fact that the Trump administration is one of the most, one of the least transparent administrations in American history. So, like, they are hiding information from the American people in order to forward their agenda, and that's straight fascism shit right there. That's right, JP. You can't stop this train. That is for darn sure. All right, Jimbo says, why do people think the Dems and Republicans are so different? Because they are. There are wildly different outcomes depending on who is in charge of both the federal and state government, Jimbo. Would you like me to go into more detail on that? Okay, Gom Fister Makra says, independent media has been dead for years. All mainstream is bought and paid for. Anyways, I mean, there are some things that are accurate about that, Gommel, but I think the situation is probably better than you are giving credit for. Okay, Triskafon says, is Trump's plan for a border peace legitimate? No. Everything with Trump is corruption. It's corruption all the way down. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Burdan says, transparency, I totally agree with, but that's the same for most administrations, specifically with the Epstein files not being released. Yeah, but Burdan, there's differences. Like, the Biden administration was way more transparent than the Trump administration. The Obama administration was way more transparent than both the Trump administration and the W. Bush administration. The Clinton administration was more transparent than the Trump administration and the George W. Bush administration. Like, think different levels exist, scale exists. Do you not agree with all this stuff that I'm telling you, man? Okay, Benjamin Clark says, at the end of the day, right or left, they are career politicians that leads to corruption. So, Benjamin, when you paint all politicians as liars or corrupt, you are making it easier for the worst actors to get away with it, because then people just assume, they're all the same, they're all just equally corrupt and shitty. So I would encourage you to not say both sides, things like that. Jimbo says, both parties have exact same motivations. Not fixing motivations will not fix anything we got now. But Democrats have fixed things, Jimbo. Democrats have done things that are good for the American people. The Republican Party is dismantling things that help people. So there's a difference. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. So you cannot convince me that both parties are the same when some people are alive and some people are dead, depending on who America voted for. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Let's see here. Tinted Yumian says, Sasha Riley. I don't know what that means. Burdan says, why didn't the Epstein files get released under the other administrations, though? So as far as I know, my live was restricted for 10 minutes because of misinformation. So that's bullshit, because that's not a thing that I did. So I guess kudos to whoever it was that's trying to silence my voice out there. Congratulations. I'm not shutting up. Burdan says, why didn't the Epstein files get released under the other administrations, though? Okay, so there weren't really Epstein files to be released during the Obama administration. They weren't released during the Trump administration in 2016 because Trump was most likely in them because he was so closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein. The Democratic Party made efforts to release the files starting in 2019 through the Biden administration, but they were being blocked and delayed by various people within the court system. So yeah, the responsibility for releasing this information is currently in the hands of the Republican Party. If we get a Democratic administration next and they also refuse to release the Epstein files, then I'll grant you that. But right now I have a bunch of examples of Democrats trying to get that information out to the public, and So yeah, they're different. I think that we would have this information now if Democrats were in charge. Ella says, "Are you Democrat or Republican?" I'm a Democrat. James Warnell says, "Judges appointed by Obama stopped it." That is inaccurate. Gomer Fista says, "How can you claim the Obama administration was more transparent when it locked up whistleblowers?" Well, I don't know too much about that, Gom Fister Makris, but that's one very specific cherry-picked example. And so, yeah, I'm sure you can find little examples of the Obama administration hiding certain amounts of information. But we're looking at it on average. Like the Trump administration won't even tell you who's visiting the White House every day. Like that's huge. Like that's massive. The Trump administration has a cryptocurrency, which means that people who we are never going to be able to hear who they are bribing Trump with limitless amounts of money and in a way that we will never be able to see. That is a lack of transparency that we have not seen in this country. Okay, Glockjaw says, "Jarrett, your pompous ass is on full display. Be my guest. Keep talking and discrediting yourself." Okay, Glockjaw. Okay, that's a blocked though, because I don't care for that kind of nonsense on my live stream. James Warnell asks questions. Are you going to get booted? Eyeball says, "Democrats won't release the info either because Epstein is foreign intelligence." Disagree. The Democratic Party made a lot of efforts to release them during both Trump administrations and the Biden administration. So it doesn't really make any sense. James Warnell, all right, congratulations, you are out of here. Don't care for that nonsense. See you later. SLT says, "You think the U.S. can get out of its fascism without further violence?" We can. Yes, 100%. If we get 3.5% of the population to engage in peaceful protest, then we win. This is historically what the political scientist Erica Chenoweth has found. And so be peaceful, be nonviolent, but do the work, and we will get out of this. Gom Fister says, "A lack of transparency on bribery. It's more important to have transparency on what our CIA is doing." Okay, I don't disagree with that, Gom Fister. But again, we are seeing less transparency on the CIA and the FBI in the Trump administration than we did during Biden and Obama. So, I am continuing to say this is the case. I do not view your examples as being disqualifying. SLC says, "Do you know what percentage we are at now?" I don't know if anybody has a specific number, but if I had to guess, I would probably say like 65, 70%. Lauren says, "What was in the files he hid and destroyed at Mar-a-Lago?" I don't know exactly what you're referring to, Lauren. Like there were the secret files that he stole from America and that he was selling access to potentially out of a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. And there's a conspiracy theory that he buried a bunch of files with his ex-wife on the golf course, but I'm not really sure, which documents you're referring to. Burdan says, why do you think most of America, apart from cities, tend to be red? I don't think that they are, but it's difficult to try to talk about the demographic breakdowns of America. So you look at the maps showing you how red like most of the country is except for the cities, but you forget how sparsely populated all of those red areas are. So all of those red areas make up a significantly smaller population than all of the blue areas. But yeah, why do people who live in rural areas tend to vote red? Well, if you're in a small town, you don't get a lot of new people, and so you don't get a lot of new ideas as much. There's not as much access to culture, and people tend to get like stuck in their ways. And if you're in a town that doesn't change a lot, then you start thinking that you can have the exact same kind of life every single generation that lives in that town, and you get a little bit more afraid of change, and so you start believing lies about people that don't look like you, and you're really skeptical about things being different. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. Okay, let's see here. Hold on just 1 second, y'all. Okay. Let's go here. Gom Fister says, "Doesn't disqualify that Trump is bad, but it does support that most administrations are crooked, if not all." So, Gom, do you recognize, will you acknowledge, will you agree that if you say that all administrations are crooked and bad, or equally crooked and bad, that it makes it easier for more corrupt administrations to get away with it because then people just sort of like assume that, oh, this is just par for the course. Like, I have people in my live stream all the time telling me like, but this is the same level of corruption as other presidents, right? And I have to disabuse them of that idea, because yeah, just the fact that Trump has a cryptocurrency is the most wildly corrupt thing that a president has ever done, potentially in American history. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling down. Burdan says, I think getting rid of illegals is good, but the way some raids have happened haven't been done as professionally as it should. I think that's kind of a massive understatement, Burdan. Like, the Trump administration said they were going to go after the worst of the worst, but 90% of the people that they are detaining and deporting are, some combination of legal residents, people that have committed zero crimes, people whose only crime is overstaying their welcome, veterans, citizens, not to mention the fact that a lot of people have died in ICE custody. And, some people, like myself, might describe some of their actions as murder. So, yeah, I think it's a little, it's a little, what's the opposite of hyperbolic? It's a little watered down to say it's lacking professionalism when, it is like hardcore fascist Gestapo shit. Gomfist says, I think his administration, his second term, was his more corrupt, and I will acknowledge your point. Excellent. Yeah, I think it is more corrupt, but I also think that the first administration was pretty darn corrupt as well. Let's see here. Me who? Great to see you again. So, would you rather if progression progressed 3 times more than now, like socially, or slow down 2 times? I would rather go speed up. Okay, Burdan says, because it's the law, I have no problem with the people themselves, but you can't break the law. All right, well, I guess my problem with that point, Burdan, is again, most of the people who Trump's ICE is detaining, deporting, and potentially murdering have done zero crimes. So I guess that's my big issue with that. Carmine says, does that make Burdan Antifa? I don't know. I don't know where he falls in the political spectrum. I'm gonna start wrapping things up, guys, because my wife is coming back to the hotel room soon. All right, Saddam Hussein Gaming says, do you think Obama was expanding ISIS in North Africa after killing Gaddafi during the NATO operation in Libya in 2001? I do not know. That question is over my head, so sorry. Let's see here. Yo, I'm listening to you 6 feet under. My neck hurts, but I'm innocent, I swear. I don't know what that means. JP says, for some people who think both parties are the same, can you please tell me how Matt Gaetz and Bernie Sanders are the same? Matt Gaetz was a House representative, was he not, JP? So I take your point, but I think it's maybe a stronger argument if you picked 2 senators or 2 House members. Burdan says, I don't like fascism, but I'm definitely not part of that group. Well, anti-fascism is literally just some people that don't like fascism, Burdan. So there's no like violent version of Antifa. Like, if you don't like Antifa, if you don't like fascism, then you're Antifa. That's it. Woke Game Marxist says, hello, comrade. Hello back to you. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your questions. Burdan, I hope that you will come back time and time again and we can continue this. Burdan says, yeah, they've been pretty violent, though. It's like BLM, like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, of course, but I don't want to support a violent group. So again, Black Lives Matter, not a violent group. Antifa, not even a group. So every time you see something on the news that's like, this is BLM doing this or this is Antifa doing this, 99% of the time it is not. And so if you want to discuss that more, you can send me a DM, come back for another live stream. But yeah, this idea that there's like all this left-wing political violence out there is 100% inaccurate. And I will happily send you some links on Ground News if that is the way that I can convince you. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. I will talk to you guys the next time I see you. I'm on the road right now, so not sure when my next live stream will be, but if it is, I hope that you guys will be here. Yeah, Burdan, I would much rather try to convince people who disagree with me, like yourself, than just speak to people that already agree with me. So please come back or send me a DM or whatever. All right, everybody, take care, everybody. Bye bye. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.